The average price of a new car has hit almost $50,000, which is crazy. But the good news is there are still bargains to be had out there, especially if you're willing to go for a car and not an SUV. We've got 3 such vehicles here today, starting with the all-new Kia K4, aka the new Kia Forte, the Honda Civic, in particular the Civic Hybrid, and where there's a Civic, of course, there must be a Corolla, also the hybrid. By now, you guys know the drill. We're gonna go over all 3 of these vehicles with a fine-tooth comb. We'll talk about the interiors, tell you about all the new technology, value, and of course, how they drive. And then at the end, we'll tell you which one of them is most worth your money. And you can trust us because here at Edmunds, we test everything. Because you know we have to do it, please like and subscribe so we can keep making videos just like this one. And if you're looking for more info on any of these cars, to get an offer on your current set of wheels, or to find out anything that's going on new in automotive, head over to edmunds.com, and they even let me right there sometimes. This comparison starts off as a battle between 3 upgraded powertrains, 2 hybrids, but in the case of the K4, a turbo. The base engine in this vehicle makes a meager 147 horsepower, but we have the GT line turbo, which comes with this turbocharged engine, and that makes 190 horsepower, and that's a bump of just over 30%. We've had a chance to drive the K4 with both the base engine and the turbo engine, and the base engine we actually found to be in some ways the weakest part of the car. It's fine if you're driving around town, but on the highway it has trouble getting up to highway speeds, and you're also going to have trouble passing. On the other hand, the turbo engine is also not quite as fun as you hope that it will be. I took the K4 out to a canyon road because I thought it might have some fun out there, but even though it has an 8-speed automatic transmission, it's the only vehicle here without a CVT, and usually that's something that we like. Its second gear is kind of weirdly short, and you find yourself just shifting between second and third gear all the time, which really puts a damper on the experience, as well as that turbo lag, that power that you want. It's not there when you really want it. Other than the engine, I would say that the K4 drives pretty decently. Braking, pretty good. The steering does weight up nicely, especially when you put it in sport mode, but I would like a little bit more feedback, especially if you're trying to have fun from behind the wheel. Handling wise, the front end does a pretty good job of staying composed. The ride quality can get a little bit choppy, especially over broken roads, but even in something like the GT line with the larger wheels and kind of thinner sidewalls, I would say that it rides pretty well. Road noise, however, is a bit of a problem. It doesn't do a great job of keeping things from the outside on the outside. At the Edmunds test track, the K4 took 7.3 seconds to get from 0 to 60 miles an hour, and that's a time that I would say falls somewhere between respectable and just okay. However, you might be surprised to hear that even in the hybridized company that it's keeping in this comparison, the K4 wasn't the quickest vehicle of this trio. Where I think the Kia actually has an advantage over the other 2 vehicles in this challenge was when it comes to driver aids. And it comes with some pretty good technology standards, so adaptive cruise control, and then you get blind spot monitors on everything except the base model standard. But here in the GT Line Turbo, you can add on an additional safety package, and that really takes things to the next level. It adds on something called Highway Drive Assist too. That adds on things like automatic lane changes, so you can just bump the signal when you're on the highway and it'll change lanes for you. And it also adds on a surround view camera with some very nice, highly detailed views. So if you look here, I even have 4 different front views that I can choose from. Even in a smaller car like this, you still appreciate something like that that's going to help you not bump into things in parking lots. A plus to Kia for including that. If I had to sort of label the K4's driving experience in one word, I would choose inoffensive. And that might seem like a bit of a slight, but it's not. I think it drives pretty well, and I would actually regard it even higher if there wasn't another vehicle in this test that just kind of does everything a little better. If you peek under the hood of your Civic and you see a bunch of bright orange cables and equipment, that's great news, because that means that you are in the Civic Hybrid, aka the good one. Honda no longer breaks up the Civic, so the top 2 trim levels are now just basically reserved for the hybrid powertrain, and it's all just under the Civic umbrella. Now, this is the same hybrid powertrain that you're also going to find in the Accord and the CR-V, and when you downscale it here in the Civic, that means that it feels really robust and very powerful. Finally, we have a Civic with torque, because that's definitely not the SI. This hybrid actually makes significantly more torque than the SI, and as such, it makes it feel a lot more robust from behind the wheel, and that also bears out at our test track, where this vehicle went from 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 6.5 seconds, and that's a lot quicker than the SI. Other than a bit more road noise than we'd like, the driving experience in the Civic Hybrid is, and I don't use this word lightly, it's pretty much flawless. When it comes to braking, it does a great job transitioning between the regenerative brakes and the physical brakes, so you can't even actually feel when that happens. The steering is taut, well weighted, and responsive, and somehow you get very good body control without sacrificing any ride comfort at all. All the members of our staff who've had a chance to drive this vehicle have come back both surprised and delighted with the way that it handles, steers, brakes, everything. And on top of that, here in the Civic Hybrid, Honda has actually fixed a problem that we've had with a lot of its vehicles in the near past, and that is driver aids that were really annoying and gave you kind of a lot of false positives and had a lot of trouble staying in its lane. They've actually been recalibrated here in this vehicle, and now they are rock solid. The Civic Hybrid is not a perfect car, but when it comes to driving experience, it's pretty damn close, especially for something of this size and in this price range. It's so good that even if you're not an enthusiast, it will make a difference, and it's a big plus for the Honda. Like the Civic and the K4, this Corolla Hybrid also technically has the upgraded powertrain for this vehicle, but unlike those two, you're paying more for efficiency and definitely not performance. This thing is down about 50 horsepower compared to the other two vehicles, and as such, its 0 to 60 time reaches all the way into the double digits. That's right, folks, 10 seconds from 0 to 60 miles an hour in this vehicle, and that means that getting up to highway speeds or things like inclines, merges, this powertrain is really going to feel taxed. It really lacks the easy power that you're getting in the Civic Hybrid, and it also lacks the top end that you're getting in the K4, but you are getting, of course, great gas mileage. But I do have to say that around town, it doesn't feel too bad, and that's because Toyota actually puts in more of a standard first gear underneath the planetary gear of the CVT, and the translation is that from a stop, this thing feels better than it should. The electric motor fills in the gaps a bit, and you can pull away from the line with a bit of impetus. However, once you get to around 40 miles an hour, the power starts to run out. Apart from that sluggish acceleration, driving the Corolla Hybrid is actually pretty good. Toyota's experience with hybrid systems means that its braking feels pretty seamless, and the ride quality, I would actually say, is quite good for something in this class and size. The steering, it's a little bit dead feeling, but that's true of most things in this segment, and I think that you can get behind the wheel of the Corolla Hybrid and feel totally fine about it. When it comes to driver aids, very similar equipment here in the Toyota also has adaptive cruise control standard that works down to a stop and lane keep assist, but I would say that both of those systems here in the Toyota are a bit busier. They're always kind of working or making micro adjustments that you can feel from behind the wheel, and as such, I sort of prefer their implementation in the Kia and the Honda. I'm glad to be wrapping up the driving section here in the Corolla because I think it is a good example of sort of how standards can really change within a segment. The Corolla Hybrid drives quite well, and I would actually say that you would be really happy with it if that Civic Hybrid hadn't come along and really just raised the bar for what you can expect out of a compact sedan. The K4, the turbo engine, is better than the base engine, but that turbo lag makes it a bit less enjoyable than it should be. So if I had to rank them, it would be number 1 Civic, number 2 Kia by a hair, and number 3 Toyota. Finally, an interior that's not all black. It's a nice wheel. What's a KN? When it comes to the interiors, the K4 has the most modern look and feel of these three vehicles by a good margin, and I mean that in the best way. This kind of feels like an interior out of one of Kia's EVs, and everything about it is aesthetically really pleasing. Now, for ease of use, there are some issues, and that starts with the climate controls being put in this screen right here. Up here, this might kind of look like one thing, but it's actually 3 separate screens, and this is the one that houses the climate controls. Now, in our long-term Kia EV9, we didn't really like it because you can't really see it when you're driving. The steering wheel blocks it out. Same thing here in the K4, but what Kia did is they offer redundancy in the form of buttons. Physical controls on this vehicle are done really well. These for the screen, these for the climate controls. So there is a way to use this climate control system without having to use that screen at all, and that's a good thing. The K4 also has superior small item storage compared to the other 2 sedans, and that's thanks to this very flexible area right here. Now, you'll also see this in a lot of Kia's SUVs, but thankfully it's made its way down to the K4. 2 cup holders here, but they can actually fold out of the way to give you more storage. But the nice thing about these cup holders is in the other 2 vehicles, you can of course fit a small water bottle like this one, but none of the other ones can fit the big boy like the Kia can. The K4, like many Kia products, offers great value when it comes to features. So there are some features here in the K4 that you're not going to get in the other 2 vehicles, like heated and ventilated front seats. The other 2 only have heated front seats. And what Kia does particularly well is they cut their corners in places that you can't really see. All these compact sedans, they're affordable vehicles, so there are places where they maybe not feel quite as nice, but in the Kia, it's for things like this front passenger seat, for example. It's not powered, it's actually manual adjustable, but it's the only vehicle that I know where you have a manually adjustable front seat that also has heating and ventilation, and that's definitely a trade that I would make. The K4 has my favorite back seat of this bunch, and that's for 2 key reasons. The first one being roominess. So this front seat is set up where I like to drive. I'm just under 6 feet tall, and as you can see, I still have plenty of leg room and a surprising amount of headroom as well, given how sort of swept the profile of this vehicle is. This seat doesn't recline, but it actually sits at a pretty naturally comfortable position, although I do wish that the cushions had a bit more kind of give to them. They're a bit stiff, but if you're sitting in a good spot like this, you can kind of get past that. The middle seat is no good, but the middle seat is no good in any of these, so no problem there. And the second reason that I really like this back seat, it's got the most amenities. This is the only one that offers rear air vents, which can be crucial, especially for people who get car sick, and you also get 2 USB charging ports down there that are very easy to reach. While the K4's interior might look more modern, I actually like the way that this interior feels perhaps a bit more. And that's because Honda has a knack for small details, starting with things like these knobs here, which help you control the climate control. These are actually made of metal, which is something you're not gonna find a lot in this class and price range. And I don't know if you can hear this, but when I turn them, they have a really satisfying click and some great knurling. 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 That might be my new favorite word. Honda also does a really good job with a balance between its physical controls and what it's putting in the touchscreen. So for example, the climate controls here, we really like those being physical because you use them all the time. Same thing with things like a home button or a back button. But the rest of it is thrown in the screen, and I think that that's fine because you're still able to access the things that you need to get to quickly with one touch. This Honda also has a really comfortable and supportive pair of front seats. These seat cushions in particular on the bottom extend out really far, and they give you really good support for your legs, and they are heated, so they'll keep you nice and toasty on a cold day. Here in the backseat of the Civic Hybrid, I think that the seats here are actually more comfortable than what you're getting in the K4. They've got a bit more padding and you kind of sink into them nicely as you settle in, but as you can tell, it's less roomy, so less legroom here, a bit less headroom. And also the big problem is a lack of rear amenities. So if you're sitting back here, look at the back of this center console, there's no charge ports, there's no air vents, there's no nothing. And if you're sitting behind the driver, you don't even get a pocket behind this seat. The Civic Hybrid's goodies, they basically all live up front, and if you're in the back seat for a long drive, buckle up. As we hop up to the front of this Corolla Hybrid, there are 2 things to keep in mind. One, this is a Nightshade edition, which is actually based on the SE trim, and that's not the top trim level of the Corolla, so there is a Corolla that has better materials and a few other things. The second thing to keep in mind, this is actually a 2024 version of the Corolla. The 2025 Corolla is getting a few updates up front that we think will actually help it quite a bit, so you just might have to imagine that the screen is a bit bigger for the new model year. That being said, things in the Corolla though are definitely not as nice this is what you're getting in either the Civic or the K4. This feels very dated in comparison, and also Toyota uses a lot of hard plastic surfaces that really don't feel all that nice to the touch. So the Corolla Hybrid is down on features to both of those vehicles, and also down when it comes to styling. This relatively simple dashboard does keep physical climate controls, which again, we like, but the control scheme in this vehicle is a bit weird because some of the settings you have to access through the cluster screen, and some of them are in this screen here. So depending on what you want to do, you actually have to go to different places, and it becomes annoying when you're trying to figure out, if I want to adjust the safety features, oh yeah, I have to do that here, and I can't do that here. The Corolla Hybrid's backseat is definitely the tightest of the bunch, the least legroom and the least headroom. And the other problem that it has is that this roof line kind of cuts down pretty low. So if I turn and look left, all I see is the roof and I can't really see out the window. The other problem that you're going to have with this backseat, especially compared to the other two, is if you're trying to put in a car seat, especially a rear-facing one, it's going to be a really tight squeeze, and this front passenger is probably going to introduce their knees to the dashboard. When it comes to amenities back here, better than the Civic, worse than the Kia. 2 USB ports, but no air vents. So when it comes to the interiors, I give the K4 the slightest edge over the Civic. I think you'd be very happy with both. The K4 has more features, but the Civic's materials and fit and finish are absolutely superb. In third place, though, clearly is the Corolla. This cabin is in sore need of a redesign, and hopefully it's something that can be fixed when the new Corolla finally arrives. When it comes to technology, the K4 runs circles around the other two vehicles, if we're being frank. This 12.3-inch touchscreen that you see here, actually standard on every K4, and that screen is bigger than the upgraded screens you're getting in both the Civic and the Corolla. This 12.3-inch instrument cluster screen standard on the top 2 trim levels, and again, that's bigger than anything you're getting in the other sedans. This technology suite as a whole is really comprehensive and really easy to use. There's actually a new voice assistant here in the Kia. Now, voice controls aren't something that I use very often, but it's so good in this car that I would actually consider using them. You can do things like, hey Kia, what's the best time of the year to visit Disneyland?
The best time to visit Disneyland is during the off-peak seasons, typically mid-January to mid-March and mid-September to mid-November.
And now, thanks to my Kia, I won't be waiting in line all day. The Kia also does pretty well when it comes to charging options. You have a wireless charging pad up here and 4 total USB ports, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. And that means 1 charging point for every person you can carry. When it comes to technology here in the Civic, there is a lot to like. A 9-inch touchscreen up here, and while that's smaller than the 12.3-inch screen in the Kia, it's actually mounted pretty far forward, so it doesn't seem all that small. You're also getting a large digital display here in the instrument cluster. Now, this screen is running the latest infotainment from Honda. It has deep Google integration, so Google Maps is actually your native navigation, and you also have access then to the Google Voice Assistant, and it's really, really good with voice commands. You're also going to get a wireless charging pad down here and 2 USB-C ports as well. Now, if there's a reason though that this makes me a little bit grumpy, we have those things here in this Sport Touring trim, but all the other trims of the Civic, so hybrid and gas, you can't get any of this stuff. All the other trims actually come with a 7-inch screen, and 7 inches is pretty dinky. You're also getting a smaller screen here, and you're also losing wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connectivity, and you're also losing that wireless charging pad. So if you order a lower trim level of the Civic, whether it be the 2 gas versions or the lower trim hybrid, you're just missing out on a lot of the good stuff. The other problem with the Civic is a lack of charging options, the 2 USB ports and the wireless charging pad up here, but nothing else. So that means that you're not getting 4 USB ports like you're getting in the other 2 vehicles. For 2025, the Corolla Hybrid gets an update that installs a new 10.2-inch touchscreen mounted high up on the dash where it's easily visible, and we would love to show that to you, but we're in 2024, so we've got the 8-inch screen to show you instead. Now, this will be the standard screen still for the Corolla Hybrid, and it is, for lack of a better word, it's dinky, and it's got a lot of bezel. So you look at this housing, and you kind of think that the screen is going to be bigger, and then you kind of turn it on, and you see that there's bezel here, and what you're actually getting feels quite small in comparison to both the Civic, even though it's only an inch larger, and the Kia. This is running the latest version of Toyota's infotainment system, and you are getting wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay connectivity, and those two things really save the system. I do actually like this native Maps app. They've done a lot of work on it, and they've added some integration into it, especially when you're searching for places like restaurants. It'll actually pop up the phone number and some other crucial information, but I still think the smartphone route is generally better. So compared to the other two vehicles, the Corolla just feels really down when it comes to tech features, especially if you go for one with a smaller screen. The bigger screen will help it feel a lot more competitive with the other sedans.
When it comes to technology, it's no contest. The Kia had the best screens, the best user interface, and the most charging options. The Civic comes in second, with the Toyota bringing up the rear. However, if we had had a new version of the Corolla with that larger screen, it might have leapfrogged the Honda in this category.
When it comes to cargo, you'll see minor differences on the spec sheet for all three of these vehicles, but of course, we had to test that out for ourselves, and we found that all of them fit just about the same amount of stuff. All of them will fit a set of golf clubs in the trunk, as well as 2 bags pretty easily. Now, the nice thing is that both the Kia and the Honda offer little releases in the trunk, so you can actually drop the rear seat down without having to walk around. The Toyota does not. So if I had to pick a winner out of these three when it comes to cargo and utility, I'm probably taking the Kia because it has those seat releases, the widest cargo opening, and as we saw earlier, the best interior storage as well. Now, the good news is if you want even more utility out of any of these three, both the Corolla and the Civic are offered as hatchbacks currently, and Kia tells us that the K4 will also be getting a hatchback version of its own, and that means that the hatchback revolution is almost complete. Now, even though these three vehicles all sit on the affordable end of the new car spectrum, it doesn't mean that they're all equal when it comes to value. So as we talk value for each of these vehicles, we're not going to just consider what we have here, we're going to sort of consider the model as a whole. And when you do that for the K4, you start to see a lot of value, especially with its lower trim levels. And that's because even the base model, as we said before, comes with the large screen, a larger screen that you can get in the top trim levels of the other two vehicles. Tons of equipment down there, really low starting price, right around $23,000. And all K4s also come with an exceptional 10-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Now, this turbo engine is expensive. It's a $2,900 option, and given the performance gains that you don't really see from it, I don't really think that it's worth it. But the catch is that if you want all the latest driver aids that we did like so much, you're gonna have to go for the turbo. The good news is this vehicle, as it sits, $32,000, and even at that price, for what you're getting in terms of technology, fit and finish, and how nice that interior feels, that's a good price.
Where the K4 struggles against this hybrid competition on value is fuel economy. With the turbocharged engine equipped, this vehicle gets an estimated 29 mpg combined, and that's far less than the nearly 50 mpg you can get out of the other two vehicles. And what that means is that if you choose one of the hybrids over the K4, you're going to save about 40% on gas, and that is something you simply cannot ignore. So when you consider the added cost of this powertrain, its lack of efficiency, and the fact that the Civic Hybrid is still just way more fun to drive, things don't look so good for the Kia.
If the Civic has a problem when it comes to value, it's that if you want to get into the Civic Hybrid, and you do because that's the one that you want, the cost can be a little bit higher compared to the Corolla. And that's because of the way Honda structures the Civic's trim levels. The bottom two trim levels, gas engine, the top two, hybrid, and that means even the cheaper of the two hybrids, you're gonna be spending $30,000 just to get into one. And like we said, that vehicle will have the 7-inch screen. You won't get any of the good tech, you won't get the good driver aids or any of that in that lower trim Civic Hybrid. We usually don't recommend top trim levels in these vehicles, but here, this is actually the one that we would recommend because you do want that larger screen, you do want all those tech goodies that we really liked, and going down to a 7-inch screen, that's really not something that you want to do. When it comes to fuel economy, this thing is a champion. Nearly 50 mpg combined, just a hair better than you're getting in even the Corolla over there. And in that sense, with the driving experience, the fuel economy, and all that, this Civic Hybrid is worth the money. It's just not the cheapest hybrid you can get in this test. Where the Corolla Hybrid finds its value is that Toyota offers this hybrid powertrain up and down the entire Corolla lineup. And that means that you can add it to even the base model for right around $1,500. And at that cheap, it's something that you can make up in fuel savings in just a few years, according to the EPA. The Toyota also has 2 years of free maintenance that the other two vehicles lack. And yes, even though the Corolla doesn't feel as refined on the inside, and yes, it is behind on tech features, if you want the cheapest way to get into a hybrid and get those really good fuel economy numbers, the Toyota is it. It's hard to declare one winner when it comes to value because each of these three vehicles in their own way offer very different value propositions. So here is what I would say. If you want the best fuel economy for the least money, the Toyota. If you want the best base model with the most features, the K4, and if you just want something that feels super refined and good overall, the Civic. So we've reached the end of our comparison test and it's time to declare an overall winner and share some results. In third place was clearly the Corolla Hybrid. Not a bad vehicle, it just ran into two other compact sedans that are really raising the bar for what vehicles in this segment can offer. In second place, we have the Kia K4. Even though it won the technology section and just squeezed out a win in the interior section, its driving experience really let it down. What the K4 needs is either a hybrid powertrain of its own to give it really good efficiency, or even a fully electric powertrain to give it excellent performance. EV4, anyone? And that leaves us with our winner, and it's no surprise that the Civic Hybrid comes out on top because it is also the winner of our Edmunds top rated Best of the Best award for 2025. The Hybrid's interior feels top notch for something of this class, and a big reason that it won is also because from behind the wheel, it is just an absolute joy to drive. It feels powerful and sporty, yet you get almost 50 miles per gallon as well. It's really just a total package. And if you want more cargo room, there's that hatchback version as well. So the Honda is our winner today. And I think that we've proven that even though the average price of a new car has gone sky high, you can still get a lot of car for not a lot of money. Thanks for watching.